Wow, right. I can see the first person watching is my pal, Charles Mishayashi. How wonderful. I'm really glad you saw that. Just before I start my introduction, just to say that I met Charles many years ago in Zimbabwe, him and his family, Monica and their daughter at the time, their baby daughter. So they're in London now, but when they moved to London, they found me again. So it's lovely to see you, Charles. Uh, I'll start, I think, just in case anyone other than Charles is watching. Um, I wanted to say a big thank you to High Life and the library service for asking me to do an event like this tonight in Facebook Live. For those of you who are not aware, this is Book Week Scotland, which has been a wonderful thing that's been happening over the last few years in Scotland. And looking at my diary last year, it's grown over the years. Looking at my diary last year, I can't believe the number of places I went to in Scotland. My very last day, I went to two prisons and also addressed a group of sheriffs, which seemed to be a wonderful combination for the last day of Book Week Scotland. Sadly, with the pandemic, I can't get out to see everyone, and I don't have that wonderful pleasure of travelling about Scotland during Book Week Scotland. But on another note, of course, problems are also opportunities. So with Facebook Live, I can do an event that people might never have been able to see. This is being hosted by obviously Highland Libraries, but it can be seen on Facebook right across Scotland and beyond. And my experience, those of you who know me will know that I'm a co-founder of Bloody Scotland, Scotland's International Crime Writing Festival, and we were faced, of course, with the terrible dilemma in the pandemic: how do we hold Bloody Scotland? And we decided to really just grab the opportunity and do it digitally. And it's worth knowing what that meant, because it's a bit like tonight. Although we wouldn't have chosen to have it that way, we ended up, normally in Stirling we have sort of 10,000 people or tickets sold over the weekend, and during the weekend this year, going digital, we had 27,000 people tuned in from over 22 countries. I don't think we could have ever done that if it hadn't been for the pandemic. So there's good and there's bad. And I'm going to treat this as a really good experience tonight. I'm currently in Carbridge, my home village. I've been here for quite a while now. And it's very exciting for me to do this because I'm actually writing the next Rhona, and I have a deadline, that terrible word, of the end of November. So if my editor, Alex Saunders, listens in now or later, can I just promise him I am spending 12 hours a day on this book, and this is my escape. So welcome to my escape from my deadline. Tonight I want to talk a little bit about the whole Rhona series, which amazingly is now currently at book 15, because actually the Rhona series was written in Edinburgh where I was living, but it was born here in my home village of Carbridge. And how that came about was a little bit of background. My father was a detective inspector in Greenock, and when he retired from the police force, he brought his family to Carbridge. He knew the area well. He had used to come up and look after a farm in the Boat of Garton. He came from farming stock, my father, to let the family at Gartonbeg go on holiday. And so we got this wonderful opportunity as children to come up and stay in this wonderful Spey Valley. So when he retired, he brought his family here. I was already at Glasgow University at that point, so when I used to come up on holiday. And then I ended up coming to live here with, brought my husband and I came to live here. We built a house here in Curbridge, and our children went to school here, our first two children, our oldest two children. And I used to teach in Granton Grammar School, and I taught mathematics there and then computing science as well. And one of my best maths classes of all time I had at Granton Grammar School. One of my neighbours' daughters here in Curbridge was in my class, and her name was Emma Hart. And she went off to university and she chose a subject that I hadn't heard of and most people hadn't heard of at that time, and that was forensic science. So if you hold that to one side, I decided I'd been working with short stories, literary short stories, had some pieces on the television, filmed, and I wanted to write a novel. And I came up with an opening scene for it that involved, someone connected to the police service turning up at a scene of crime. And they thought they knew the victim. Which sort of came slightly from my father worrying about his three daughters getting into trouble and him having to go and sort it out in Greenock. Anyway, what happened was I thought, right, okay, who is this person turning up at the scene of crime, in what capacity? And I can remember thinking, okay, bear in mind I'm living in Edinburgh, and round the corner from me is Ian Rankin lives. And I thought, well, shall I have a male detective? With angst, and and I thought, but wait a minute, I know somebody's done that so well. How could I even attempt such a thing? And then I had a moment, one of these wonderful moments, where I thought, I'll make it a woman. But why is she there? Is she a detective? I thought, wait a minute, I'll make her a forensic scientist. And the wonder of that is I didn't know anything about it. Nothing about, I probably knew more about the police than I did about forensic science. But if you're a writer and you get a moment like that where a character walks in, and my character, Dr. Rhona MacLeod, walked into my life. I mean, I'd never met her before, and there she was. But I also knew someone who was a forensic scientist. So I do believe that Emma Hart was my inspiration. Rhona is not Emma, and Emma will tell you that right away, but the inspiration for creating such a character came because I knew Emma, and I admired what she had gone on to do. So that's how it began. And in fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about the first book in the series because they've all been re-released, republished, and DriftNet is as popular now as it was back in 2003. And this is the new cover for DriftNet. It's been out a little while now, but Pan Macmillan reissued it with a beautiful cover. But it was funny to open it and look here again. What it says is, as you open the book, thanks to Emma R. Hart, BSc, MSc, Forensic Science, for our inside knowledge. So it's all Emma Hart's fault. And what happened was she, at that time, trying to get any sort of textbooks about forensic science was incredibly difficult. I mean, I can remember going into, it would have been Ottakers actually at the time in Princess Street in Edinburgh, and going to try and find something there. And I got an encyclopedia of forensic science, which I still have, and I used it, and very kind, that was the only one I could find. Emma very kindly read my script and pointed out where I was right and where I was wrong and where things had moved forward. So I will be internally grateful to her for somehow stimulating the idea of Rhona MacLeod. I said Rhona MacLeod, I gave her, or I made her, an adopted person. I have no idea why, but her parents based in Glasgow, my old university area. I went to Glasgow University first. Later on in my life, I went to Edinburgh University. So I've sort of crossed the Great Divide. But I knew that area around in Glasgow, up around the university there, so well, being there as a student. I married a Glaswegian. I lived in Lint House. For those who don't know where that is, it's really Govan. And so the world of Glasgow around the university, I knew that she had to be there because I felt so comfortable with it. So I gave her this wonderful location for a lab. And I can tell you now, this is fiction because there isn't a forensic science lab there. In fact, when I was writing Rhona MacLeod, she would have been in Pitt Street. Now, if you Pitt Street in Glasgow, there's no view. Looking out the window is not a particularly nice thing to do. And I thought, oh no, I'll just put her where I want to be. And it was quite funny because I went back to my old university and did a forensic diploma in forensic medical science once I'd written DriftNet. And Dr. John Clark, who ran the course, told me, I know where Rhona's lab is. And I said, oh, do you? And he said, yes, it's in the principal's office of Glasgow University. I thought, he's absolutely right, because what a view he's got. So you can see this wonderful world of real science and a writer creating fiction and stories around it. It's the best fun ever to do. And having done the course, the forensic course at Glasgow, I met a lot of other people who were involved in the real work, who I could call on. And in fact, if you do read my books, you'll find I always acknowledge them. We're very, very lucky in Scotland to have people who are the real workers in the world of the police and the forensic services, who really support Scottish writers because they want us to get it as right as we possibly can within the world of fiction. And one of the reasons they often give is anybody could be in a jury and they will have to listen to material. It would be much better if they had already become familiar with it. And we've had a lot of people in the world that helps me and Anne Cleves and everybody can think of. My partner in crime, Alex Gray, her and I we were together on that course. And out of that, many years later, came Bloody Scotland. Her and I came up with the idea of Bloody Scotland. So I'm very grateful for that. Rhona MacLeod, I'll tell you a little funny story about the Rhona MacLeod character. Scotland there used to be a wonderful Scottish Screen used to run a course together with STV in Inverness called Movie Makers, and I went there with a script for DriftNet, which almost got picked up in America. It was this world is a strange world, but anyway. But what I wanted to tell you was I sat opposite someone in the industry, and it was a man, and he said to me, okay, pitch me your idea. That's a very scary thing, actually, but I did. I pitched him Rhona MacLeod and the background to DriftNet, and he sat there in this very straight face, and he said to me, oh, you know that sound? Oh, you're going to have an awful hard job selling her. Ooh. I thought, why? He said, who would like a woman who gave up her child for adoption. That was it. So, and I think, I can't even remember his name now, but I would love to tell him that, that was prior to 2003 when the book came out, and here we are in 2020. Somebody liked Rhona MacLeod, even though it wasn't him. Right, what I would like to do is, I'm going to, please send questions in as you think about them, and my long-suffering husband is going to keep the questions, and I'll see them coming up. So questions are wonderful, because if you're in a library situation and the audience asks you questions, it sends you off in lovely little tangents, and stories associated with that question, which hopefully makes it more interesting for you. It certainly makes it more interesting for me. But I thought I might just read you a very small piece from Driftnet, which sort of has Rhona arriving at this crime scene. Okay, it's very short, I should say. When the phone rang, Sean barely moved. Rhona knew once it rang 4 times, the answering machine would cut in. The caller would listen to Sean's amiable Irish voice and change their view of answering machines, thinking they might be human after all. Rhona lifted the receiver on the 3rd ring. It would be an emergency, or they wouldn't phone so late. When she suggested to the voice on the other end that she would need a taxi, the sergeant told her that a police car was already on its way. Rhona grabbed last night's clothes from the end of the bed. Constable William McGonigal had never been at a murder scene before. He had stretched the yellow tape across the tenement entrance, like the sergeant told him, and chased away 2 drunks who thought that police activity constituted a better bit of entertainment than staggering home to hump the wife. Constable McGonigal didn't agree. "Go home," he told them. "There's nothing to see here." He was peering up the stairwell, wondering how much longer he would have to stand there freezing his balls off, when he heard the sound of high heels clipping the tarmac. A woman leaned over the tape and stared into the dimly lit stair. "Sorry, miss, you can't come in here." "Where's Detective Inspector Wilson?" Constable McGonigal was surprised. "Upstairs, miss." "Good," she said. Her hair shone in the darkness, and Constable McGonigal could smell her perfume. She lifted a silken leg and straddled his yellow tape. "I'd better go on up then," she said. And hence Rhona MacLeod was born. Okay, I'll just have a quick look if anybody's got a question. If you've got a question, please feel free to ask me it. Right, the thing about Rhona being a forensic scientist, and I didn't realise how useful it was when I created her. This was back in the day before Police Scotland, so you will know if you're a big Rebus fan that the police were anchored in a particular area, a city, even a part of a city, and that was the area that they dealt with where crime was involved. Of course, Police Scotland changed all that, and teams go out all over the country now. Of course, when I wrote Rhona, we were in a situation where the person who might go out and, like Rhona, go out and actually study a crime scene in detail would go everywhere. And you'll find that the forensic people that I know, go here, there and everywhere. And not only that, they often go abroad as well. They're called abroad. And within the context of their work, they're asked to study all over the UK, study crime scenes and scenarios all over the UK. And when I realised that, I thought, oh gosh, that was a bit of serendipity as well, because I've lived all over Scotland. So to be able to move, you know, from a base of Glasgow, and Glasgow features quite largely, but to be able to move about Scotland just was wonderful for me, because, you know, I spent quite a number of years in Glasgow, and then John and I moved to Orkney. We lived in Orkney. We lived in a caravan down here on a farm called Orikirk in Orkney when we were first married. We came back to the Spey Valley and John built the house and we had kids here, and then we moved out to Nigeria, a very remote part of northern Nigeria. In fact, I was talking to David Pratt, overseas correspondent, on via Twitter today. We were discussing Kano and the camel market because I remember it well. In fact, one of the books, the Rhona books, Dark Flight, is partly in Glasgow and partly out in Nigeria. So being able to sort of explore the worlds even within Scotland has been great fun to do. It demands quite a lot of research, but I really enjoy it. And I also, there's this sort of, well, Ian Rankin once said, I think at Bloody Scotland, that if you're going to visit a place that you've never been to before, find a crime writer that writes about that place. And you will find you learn a lot more about the country or the location through reading about how they deal with all stratas of society and how the society is structured. And I think that's true if you think of Donna Leone in out in Venice, and I mean it's a wonderful way of getting to know a place. So in this instance, you know, with Rhona, I can move about Scotland with her, and I can be in another world. And I think that's, I know as a reader, I love to enter another world and learn about that world. And the thing about crime writing is you learn about the society that the crimes happened in, because essentially the police can go wherever they want. And I find that quite fascinating. So anyway, so I set a few books up in Orkney because I lived there, and you know, I knew it very well. Obviously Glasgow is the sort of mainstay because Rhona is, and I go back through a lot to Glasgow, and I go down from up here to Glasgow, and I'm a West Coaster. You know, I taught in Edinburgh for years, and the first thing they said to me was, "You're a West Coaster," as soon as I opened my mouth. So I like that variety. So what I'm going to do now is just talk a little bit about where we went from there. After Driftnet, the next book was called Torch, and Torch, light the match, let them burn. I set Torch in Edinburgh. Edinburgh and Glasgow, it's a kind of twins in Torch. And I actually set it during the, you know, the madness of Hogmanay in Edinburgh. Edinburgh turned into the I don't know, Hogmanay, capital of the world. It got really, really silly, and I set it over those few days, partly because I was so horrified by it all, but I had a lot of fun with that, and it involves arson. So if you're going to write about something, you really have to study it and learn about it. And I was lucky enough to be allowed to go into the centre of the fire brigade organisation in Edinburgh, and they welcomed me and gave me lots of ideas, which I wrote them all down, but I haven't used them to light a fire. I can tell you that. Number 3 the early books was set on Rassie. Now, I have to mention this because I would never have known about Rassie had the village school in Carbridge not used to take their pupils to Rassie House. And my two older children went to the school. So I had gone out to Rassie House, and if you ever get the opportunity, it's still the same people, but it's been all done up and all, but sort of an outward bound place, and it starts off in Glasgow, but it virtually spends most of its time on Rassie, and that was a delight to write. So it's the way that it works is I get an idea, I get a visual idea because I've written for screen as well, and I see a scene, and then I think what happens in that scene, that opening scene, and I don't know what happens after that. I'm hoping they'll tell me. Rhona will tell me what happens after that. That's roughly how it works. I have only ever murdered anybody in my home valley once, but that's not to say I'm not planning to do it again. But it took me to, I think it was book 12, to actually set something in the Spey Valley. And I think it was fear of repercussions, because if you start murdering people, they'll go, who's that? Is that anything to do with me? Didn't you like me or something? Anyway, Follow the Dead was set in the Spey Valley and came about because of a very snowy New Year, where the whole family were here in Carbridge, our 3 children, their spouses and all the rest of it, and we don't have a telly, and we were playing daft games, and I looked out and it was snowing really heavily, and for some reason I thought, what would it be like if you were up in Cairngorm and it's Hogmanay and you're snowed in somewhere, you're in one of these places you hide out up there. And I liked the idea, so I did the sensible thing. After I wrote the opening scene at the shelter stone, I went to the Cairngorm Mountain Rescue, and Willie Anderson saved my life literally by giving me all the information I needed. And added to that, I got the opportunity. I went to Norway, and I did that because he told me a story about light aircraft coming from Norway, quite a few of them, and some of them coming down in Cairngorm. And the nice lady from the Norwegian consulate in Edinburgh comes to Bloody Scotland when we have writers from Norway, so I knew her, and she set me up with the opportunity to meet the police in Stavanger, which I did, and created a character, a policeman from Stavanger in that story. So in a way, I was carrying out really what Ian Rankin had said. I went over there and I learned about how their police work and their world works, and that was fascinating. And I still remember landing in the airport with John and I, landing and thinking, how do we get out of this airport? And then we saw this big sign above a door and it said Ut. So we thought, okay, that's where we go. So I would highly recommend Norway, very much so, and the police were fantastic and very, very helpful, and that was in Follow the Dead. And I'm going to come now to a very important book for a number of reasons. They're all important, but after Sins of the Dead, where Rhona is very traumatized by what happens, I take her back to Skye, where her adoptive parents came from, and there's fictionally they still have a little house there. They're both dead, but she goes out periodically. The way I go west, she goes to Skye to recuperate. That's what I do. I go into the west, into the west. So I thought I would have the book following that, set in Skye, but I didn't actually have an idea. And I'm going to introduce you to the idea now. I became friendly online on Twitter with Blaze page, Blaze, the Dugface Skye. And I was out visiting him and his dad, Steve, and I had no idea. It was February, it was very, very cold. He lives out at Ace Target Sports, and I had no idea what I was going to write about. I had an idea that I might like to, sorry, I'm just looking here now, that I might like to write about Rhona in Skye. Not officially working, because she's supposed to be recuperating. And I thought, well, it would be quite fun to wonder, Rhona's a bit of a workaholic, how does she survive if she's not actually on a job? But of course, she ends up on a job. And I was there, and he was showing us how to throw axes, and I threw an axe, and I listened to what he told me to do, and my axe got in first time, but then John had his go and he wasn't listening, so it was bouncing off. Too much strength. It's not about strength, it's just anyway. And I got this wonderful idea because Blaze took me a walk up the back in among the trees, up onto the hill, and I just knew in that moment that I had an idea for this particular book, and it was because of the dog. So I opened it with a very little bit about the dog, who becomes quite a hero in this scenario. The dog stirred, ears pricking up, positioning themselves like radar. The night was full of noise for the border collie, not so for his owner, slumbering only inches away. The crackle and spit as a log settled in the stove, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of trees in the wind, the chatter of the burn that ran behind their caravan, all those the big collie heard and dismissed, but not the other sound. Raising his head, he listened, searching for what had awakened him, the memory of which troubled the dog, because he sensed that the sound had been made by a human, one in distress. The dog jumped up, certain now of what he should do and how quickly he would need to do it. A loud bark brought his bleary-eyed master to open the door, his words, at having been woken so abruptly, sharp on the ear. A blast of icy wind swept in, together with a flurry of wet snow, as the dog jumped up, oblivious to the order to be quick. He caught the smell of human almost immediately. More than one. Only a limited number of humans visited his home site during the winter months, and at least one of the scents he picked up now he recognised. How far away was the fear, and in which direction? The dog paused to sniff the ground, catching perhaps the trail deposited earlier. Into the trees now, his swift run disturbed other creatures that lived on the 12-acre site, causing them to flee before him. A white hare rushed past, and the dog almost lost concentration, until his training kicked in. Find the human. Follow their fear. He was circling, radar ears turning, nose to the air, aware that as the group had moved in circles in their earlier game, he too might do the same, never to reach his goal. The dog stood stock still, every hair in his shaggy body bristling. The new smell came to him then on the wind, making his shiny black nose twitch in anticipation. It was one he knew well, a scent that emanated from his usual prey, the blood smell of the kill. Right, okay, you're safe enough if you go to Skye, I have to say. Have we got any questions yet? Am I just blying on here? I've got comments. Hello, I've got a few comments and hello. Wait, I'll just go down a wee bit. Ah, right. Oh, how wonderful. You see, I'm too busy talking. Oh, yeah, Charles says, Yambu finished reading the Magic Flag Mystery. Right, I'm going to talk a little about that. And there is Blaise, Luach and Guinea. Right, good. Oh, keep going. Which was your favourite book to write and why? Well, funnily enough, I think I'm just going to mention that now. Sorry, John. I forgot to. I'm doing too much talking. That's my man telling me I'm too much talking and I won't, answer any of these. I'm going to say a little thing about one more book and then I am going to answer these questions, which I had ignored and, well, no, I just didn't look at them. When I was out in Skye and had such fun with Blaise and learned so much about a dog, and I really realised that a dog was really our first forensic. The power of their ability to smell. It's a little bit I say in the book that came out of my research. If you put a spoonful of sugar into an Olympic-sized swimming pool, a dog will know there's sugar in there. I just think that's amazing. So I loved that whole idea. And I had a lot of fun working with Blaise and thinking about Blaise. And I would send messages to Steve to ask him if he could do this and do that and, the other. And anyway. And out of that came a whole new world. And I decided, this is Book Week Scotland. And the best thing you can possibly do for children is to get them to read. And I've always felt that. And I taught maths and computing and predominantly computing, but I was a huge reader. And if I hadn't been a reader, I wouldn't have been a writer. And I thought, well, wait, we've got this wonderful character, this Blaise dog detective with a sidekick, his wee brother who has much to learn, Luach, and I just thought they were a wonderful combination. And so after some conversations with Blaise and Luach's dad, we came up with the idea that we would create a children's book. So we did that, and I'll hold it up now. It's Blaise Dog Detective, and it's called The Magic Flag Mystery. And it's set on Skye. It's got all the wonderful, some very real characters from the world of Skye. And it's the first of a series. And I don't know, as a writer, as a young person, The Famous Five, I just totally loved it. The way that young people could actually solve things that adults couldn't. It was so empowering, and she wrote wonderful mysteries. I loved them all. And so for me, I wanted something set in today, in the world that children are in now, set on Skye with these two dogs. And we created two human children to go with them, and we got Rory, who comes from Skye and knows the whole of the island and has a canoe and is adventurous. I suppose he's a wee bit like Julian or something. He's the kind of one that can get them places. And Rosa, who I have to say was inspired by my granddaughter. She kept telling me that I should write a book for children, and I kept saying I would, and then eventually I did it. So, Rhona. And I've loved every book I've written as I've written it. But bear in mind when you're writing the Rhona series, it's we're dealing with difficult situations. So actually, to stop the most recent one, The Innocent Dead, to finish The Innocent Dead, and then get to write Blaze Dog Detective, where there is humour in the Rhona books. Tracy provides a humour, because if you're dealing with very dark things, you better have humour in there. But I had just such fun with Blaze Dog Detective. So it's out now, and I'll mention it a wee bit at the end. 7 to 11 is the rough age group for it, and you can get signed and pographed. Yeah, Blaze signs all these books, so if you fancy that for your children or your grandchildren, great way into reading. So it is. Right, I'm going to answer some questions now because I've blabbed long enough. Right. Will Rhona and Michael McNabb ever find each other instead of... Oh, I don't know who wrote that, but... I don't know. Can I just tell you, I've just been writing them again. The one I'm writing at the moment will come out next July. It's called The Killing Tide. And I both love McNabb and he drives me nuts. And I have to say that that's what happens with Rhona too. And you'll know that if you've read them together. They think they're different, but in fact they have a lot in common, which is probably why they really do watch one another's backs. And she probably confides more in him than she would like to admit. So I don't know. I think I'll have to wait and see what they tell me, because I was trying to explain to my daughter today when we were out a walk with the ducks. I wrote a sentence, and McNabb said to me, "I would never say that." I thought, okay, right, I'll have to rewrite it then. And you'll get writers will tell you that, So he's not told me yet. Let me put it that way. Although I have to say, it's one of these things he often longs for. Yeah. But I think it might be a disaster. Some relationships are a disaster. Oh, here's a question. Rhona is a bit racy with her various male encounters, but it would be much less interesting without her edge. Good. Let me tell you, she's not half as racy as Chrissy is. I have to keep looking back to the previous book to see who was in the running then. But I love her. I love her for that. Anyway. Right, how many children's series? Well, that's one out, and the next one is as soon as I get this new Rhona in, the start of the year, the next one for the children's book will be written. It doesn't take half as long. It's a lot cheerier to write. And it's going to be about dinosaurs. For those of you who are not aware, Skye is a great place for dinosaurs, or the remnants of dinosaurs. In fact, we spent a day on there recently with my granddaughter, down at the dinosaurs' footprints. And so all I can say is there's something about dinosaurs in it. So it's probably going to end up being called The Dinosaur Mystery or something like that. Adam Weir says, would you call your more technical background in maths, computer science an influence from a computer science student who likes to write? Do you know, it's really interesting that, because I think I loved maths, taught maths for a number of years before I started to teach computing science. The thing about maths was it didn't change. I mean, what you might choose to teach in a course changed sometimes, but it didn't suddenly jump into something that you didn't know. I love that about it. uh, the answers were at the back of the book, and so you could look. You had to find your way to get there. So, at the end of the day, I was the only pure maths person in my entire family. I mean, none of my kids went in for that. I don't understand why not, but there you go. The computing science fascinated me because of its change, the rate of change. And in fact, ending up in forensic science or ending up writing about that, forensic science could only be what it is because of the development of computer science. I mean, and the moves forward are influenced, obviously, by the developments in computing science, which I just find fascinating. And actually, it's a good point to just mention at this point. The book it's out at the moment comes out in paperback. You can wait till March, but The Innocent Dead. I wanted to look 45 years ago when my father was a policeman, because there was nothing in the way of forensic science then. And being a policeman's daughter, you knew what was, you got wind of what was going on in the world of Greenock, in the criminal world of Greenock. And of course, I wanted to investigate something that had happened 45 years ago, and it was a little girl that had disappeared. This didn't happen in real life, I made it up, but she disappeared en route to the chapel for her confirmation, dressed up in her nice, I was dressed up in her outfit, and they never find her. And then they find her 45 years later. And I did that because I wanted to look at what they knew then, and they didn't find out where she'd gone. But then they had this other chance, and it was a bit like the World's End thing. You suddenly had material that you could investigate forensically, and I just was fascinated by that. So if you're interested in that idea, that's The Innocent Dead, which is out just now. Will you have a new Rhona MacLeod book? Yes, I will. And this is the one I was talking about. I'm approaching the end, let's put it that way. And, my daughter phones up to ask when do this and that, and I say I'm not doing anything until I type the end. But I've broken my promise because I'm talking to all of you. But so it will come out, yeah. And it's I just thought it was a fascinating. It's a bit like I read a piece. I read a piece about one. I don't know if you know what a ghost ship is. It's these ships that just get abandoned in the Atlantic, and they're all floating about, and and one came ashore on the west coast of Ireland. And I just was fascinated by that idea. And I thought, well, I could have one of those, but it won't come ashore in Ireland. It'll come ashore in Scotland. And what they find on board is what the book is all about. So that's, and can I tell you, McNabb is in there, definitely. Okay. Oh, there you go. Shona says, I love following Blaze on Twitter. Lots of fun and great family. Yes, and I think we hope that once we get through the pandemic that we'll have an opportunity to go out together and talk about the book, and hopefully speak to pupils and everything and school children about it. And despite the pandemic, we brought it out anyway, and you'll see if you go on to Amazon that it's had a great response from people that have read it. So it's lovely to see that. But there's a world we haven't explored yet. When we launched Time for the Dead in Skye, of course, Blaze was with me at the launch in the Portree Community Library, and I vowed at that point I would be back, and I would be back with a book that put Blaise even more central stage. So that's where we are. So, any more questions? I better just check I'm not missing anything. I'll do a wee refresh. Aha. Here we go. Yes, iScot magazine, which is a beautiful magazine, and Blaise has a diary in it. So when he climbs hills or goes for long walks, there's always this wonderful. That's actually sort of that, and Twitter was sort of how I met him, because the stories are told, the diary is told from the point of view of the dog, which I completely loved, and that's how I ended up going out and meeting his dad. And that voice of the dog, I just knew that that's how you had to tell the story, through the dog's voice. So, and it's a wonderful way to learn about Skye, because everywhere in the book, just like as in Time for the Dead, exists. You can go and see them. You can be part of the world. Here's a nice, oh, right, Fiona. I was honoured to have met you at an International Women's Day. Oh, I remember that. At South Lanarkshire College. Good. Thank you very much. I'm glad you know that you met Rhona MacLeod and like to spend some time with her, because as any writer will tell you, it's your audience, it's your readers that are the most important. I got a bit of advice when I became a teacher, because it's really scary standing up in front of a whole class of kids, and I actually apply it when I go out and do events as a writer. What you have to remember is it's not about you, it's always about your audience. And I think when you write a book, you should be thinking about the people who are going to read it and what they'll get from it, and you know, the enjoyment. And I think Book Week Scotland, that is so important. And I just wanted to say now that the Scottish Book Trust has been running a thing on, you'll see it on Twitter. What they do every year is you give a small donation, whatever you can manage. They use it to buy books, and they give them to children who may not get anything at Christmas, you know. And I would urge you, if you possibly can, no matter how little, I would ask you to get involved in that. And this year, actually, I had already donated, and then I thought to myself, there was a lovely lady contacted us and said she wanted 5 Blaise books, but she didn't want them for herself. She wanted us to actually give them to a charity of our choice, a children's charity of our choice. So when I saw the event coming in again for the Book Trust, I thought that's exactly where they should go, because 5 children will get a Blaise book sometime over Christmas, and you know, I think that's important. So if you want to support the Book Trust, you go online, you'll find them, and that's what they do at Christmas, which is great if you can manage it. Oh, there's a question too. Do you remember it? Yeah, I do. Aileen, my German Shepherd in Portree. She used to show folk where the dinosaur footprint is on Staffin Beach. And if you haven't seen the dinosaur footprint, don't go when it's high tide, because you definitely won't see it. You have to have the tide out. The tide was well out when Kathleen, my granddaughter, and I were down on the beach. And if you actually can get hold of an iScot magazine, Blaise has written a wonderful article about us all looking for the dinosaur footprints and you know, doing things on Skye. Also, there's, just as there was in Time for the Dead, there, and any of the books I write set in various parts of Scotland, there's usually a little bit about a local character, you know, it's in them. And I think my favourite in Blaze Dog Detective was the Black Labrador that lived in the post office and licked the stamps for people. So you could queue up and get your stamp licked by the dog. You can't make that up. It's wonderful. Even a writer of fiction can't really make that up. Right, any more? All right, here's one. Yeah, that one's okay. Oh, and I see Jimmy Mitchell, a relative of mine. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, and see if I can spot anything. I love that. Rhona's a bit racy. I'm going to have to tell her. I thought she was quite, I don't know. Beside Chrissy, anyway. Oh, Winnipeg. There's someone in from Winnipeg. Oh, goodness me. That's what I loved about bloody Scotland. I did an event with them. I chaired. It was 5 continents. And I was this continent. And the others were from all the other continents. And can I just say now, Vina Piri is on. Now, Vina Piri and Geordie Piri are the couple that we stayed with when we moved to Orkney. We were just married, and we looked up the Arcadian to find somewhere to stay, and there was a little advert for a caravan, which was on we could just about afford it, and it was on their farm. Oh God, it was the best year ever. We stayed in this caravan, which had a concrete block wall round it, because if you don't know Orkney, you'll know. If you do know Orkney, you'll know why. And it had weights over, so it wouldn't blow away. And we had a record player, and when the wind got up, certain things started to happen. First of all, the record player had to be stopped because it was scratching the record. And then there were a few little ornaments, and then they started to come towards and fall off. And shortly after that, there would be a knock at our door. And it was Geordie Piri to say he thought we should just come in now into the house. It was in case we blew away, I think. But actually, it was wonderful because Geordie was a great storyteller. I mean, I think he probably still is. And one of the reasons I think that I started to write, I wrote stories that involved Orkney, was because of his wonderful storytelling. It was fantastic. And even after they retired from the farm, and we still went up. In fact, I should say, Vina, we were supposed to be up there in May. We had organised everything to go, and of course the world fell apart slightly, so we didn't get there. But can I just say, Vina, the book that comes out, The Killing Tide, starts off in Orkney, off Yesnaby, where this ghost ship comes aground. So I will get up to see you, hopefully before the book comes out away next July. Oh, and there's Margaret Ferguson. Now, Margaret went to school with me, and what was wonderful, we went to primary school together, and there's a lot of my primary school friends, some of whom I still meet up with. We went to school in Greenock together, and obviously we've not been able to meet up for a while, but we had a great teacher, and it was a great class. And even though we were all kind of split up over secondary schools, and after that we all came together again, which was wonderful. In fact, it's a funny little story. One of the Tommy, one of the guys I went to school with, when I was researching the book Final Cut, I needed to know about glass. Forensically, glass is really interesting. And then I realised that stained glass was even more interesting. And then I remembered that this boy that I went to primary school with was now a stained glass artist out in Sweden. We hadn't seen one another since we were 12, but I mean, who cares? So I messaged him and he got back to me. So he phoned me and said, okay, we haven't met since we were 12, but what do you need to know about stained glass? And what he told me was just fantastic, because stained glass is wonderfully forensically identifiable. And I didn't know that until I spoke to the expert. So thank you very much. So, and I think that the fact that when you ask people who have knowledge about a particular area and they're really willing, they're even enthusiastic to tell you about it, I think that makes the research in a book wonderful. The trouble is you have so much fun in there that then you think, I'll have to write the book now, you know. And actually, just having talked to Vina, I was thinking I would quite like at the end of this book to have a little bit in a proper Orkney voice, because if you haven't heard it, it's the most beautiful sound, you know. So I'll maybe be in touch with you, Vina, to see if I can get Geordie to just, you know, put the English into Arcadian for me for a little bit at the end of this book. So I'll see if I hope I will have. What time are we? Should we have finished now? I've lost the time. Oh, there's somebody who loved the Famous Five. You're not joking. The Famous Five was fantastic. Oh, very good. No, I'm sorry. This is wonderful. We had a dog when we went to Orkney, and Vina's just asking me about this dog. I won't tell you its name because actually its name was perfectly respectable at the time, but now language has changed and my poor dog's name has become slightly less respectable, as it were. But it was a mix between I don't know, it had some poodle in it and a terrier, I think, like that. So it looked a bit like a sheep, you know, and oh God, he loved Orkney. It was a rescue dog. I rescued him from the home in Glasgow, and once we get rid of the fleas and stuff like that, he was good to have around. Yeah. No, Vina, it's not that dog. No. Blaze is face guy. It's your Blaze face guy. Yeah. Yeah. Trying to see how. Ooh. I think I might have got to the end of that. Right. How's our time? Oh, I think our time is just about up. Now, what I would say, if there are any other questions you'd like to ask, feel free to send them, because what I can do on the Facebook page is just answer them for you. If there's anything you want to know and you didn't get a chance, or I didn't spot it, or anything like that. I found a few a little bit. I'll just answer these. Yambu. Hello, Yambu. Yambu is in London. She calls Amaranti Linda, and she's great fun. She's asking me my favourite character in the Magic Flag mystery. Well, I have to say it's got to be Blaze, the wise one. And he is a wise one. You know, the real dog is a wise one. The Innocent Dead, and I didn't read a bit out of The Innocent Dead, but it basically opens with wild swimming, which I do. And in fact, Vina will remember that last time I stayed with him, I went swimming off Scale Bay. And I swim down the back of Tornasheen, our home in Cowbridge is the River Dulnan, and it's very cold. Colder than Scale Bay, I have to say. So I make Rhona a wild swimmer, you know. She's probably even braver than me. And there is a bit of wild swimming at the beginning of The Innocent Dead. And the wild swimmers find something in this peaty loch that they would rather they hadn't found. I'll leave you to read and find out what that is. The name of the charity, Shona, if you just go, it's the Book Trust that do it. Now, the Book Trust Scotland, they're the ones that supply finance writers to go into libraries and all the rest of it. We're very lucky in Scotland with the support we get. The Book Trust is supported by the Scottish Government. So if you look up the Book Trust, you'll find. And they organise something every Christmas so that books can be sent to needy children that might not get books. So, in fact, I noticed on Twitter today they're also supplying things like all primary ones with a bag, all primary twos with a bag. So they do all of that. It's wonderful. Someone's asked, are there any adaptations planned for any of your books? Right, I'll just give you a quick resume of that. At one point, ITV bought the rights to all the Rhona books, and they, like many things on the telly, they were all set to go. They wrote the Bible. They started with Final Cut. I saw the script. It was fantastic. I loved it all. And at the same time, my good friend Anne Cleves, they were developing Vera. And the way that it works in this game, sometimes you just get to the front of the queue and sometimes you don't. And I'm not going to worry about that because people love Vera. And Vera got made. Only so many things get made, and Rhona didn't get made. But there you go. She may get made yet. We'll wait and see. And there's someone, oh my goodness, in Hawaii. Oh, with a wonderful name. Gosh, I couldn't. Lehua Wells, that's fantastic. In Hawaii, so much. Right, okay. I knew that this would be fun. Oh, that's lovely. Will there be a lamb in Blaze Book 2? Now, that's a very good question. Thank you, Donald Mackay, who is my co-author on these books. So I guess what he's saying, there better be a lamb in the next Blaze book. For those who don't know the joke, it's not just Blaze and Luke that live there. There is also a lamb who is no longer a lamb, but a sheep, a permanent resident who thinks he is a dog. And he's totally adorable. In fact, he always makes me want to keep one out the back. I might not, yeah. I'm assuming it's Guinea, I think. Although every time I say that, I think I'm talking about a doubloon or something like that. But I don't know. Somebody asked me today, is it Ginny or Guinea? And I thought, I'm not really sure. John's put up a sign on the chat box for you if you're interested in, and he gave me this to show and I'd forgotten. Look at that, isn't it wonderful? Blaze Dog Detective .dog. You can go on his webpage and you'll see it there. And if you want a book, we've got a wonderful wee post office in Cardbridge, and John goes down every day with these books and they get posted all. This morning it was Switzerland, I think it was sending some to. Anyway, you can get a signed in pod copy if you go on the website, and you just click, it's PayPal, and it's all included, and you can get a message. I write these messages, they're wonderful. I get told what to write. People leave what they want to say, and it's just fascinating. Grannies and grandpas and mums and dads and aunts and uncles getting their Blaze Dog Detective book for their various children. So it's lovely. Thank you, Fiona. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I should just say it's been very mild here today in the Highlands in Carbridge, but, and I got very excited by this morning, it's going to snow on Thursday. At last. Yeah. I don't want to miss anybody. Oh, Thanks, Kath. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's Kath from High Life, the library service. And it's the Scottish Book Trust in Edinburgh, as I said. Yeah, I agree, Susie. Rhona should be a Netflix series. Oh, what fun. Who would they get from McNabb? Here's a thought. I'll leave you all with that. Right, I think I don't want to keep you any longer, but if there are any other questions about the series or anything you want to ask, please just put it in the comment box, and because we're going to it will be up for a wee while on Facebook, and there's nothing like that a writer likes more than people asking them questions about their characters. um, it's really nice. Yeah, thank you very much. And if my editor's out there, I just want to tell them that I am going back to continue to try and get as far as the end. Right, I think I better say good night. And any ones that come in after this, oh, I'll answer. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, I'm not sure how I get out of here except leaving the room. Oh, I think I do know now. Okay. Night, everyone. Just hang on in there. I'm not going to say the facts thing. You know what it is. But one thing I will say, Cowbridge is in the Highlands, so we're in, the first tier. But what I am so impressed about is when I go out with the dog and my daughter in the morning and we go through the Cowbridge woods, despite the fact we've got these big woods and we're out walking there in the fresh air, everyone you meet steps to one side in among the heather to let you past. So we really are following the rules here in Cowbridge. So a big thank you. So hard times, but they will get better. Just my advice is to do what Nicola tells you. That's what I'm doing. Good night.